this. Okay, so this presentation is on everything you need to know about the individual oral for ab initio. So this first slide here gives you the structure of the oral. The full oral goes for 7 to 10 minutes, and it is based on the 5 course themes, which are identities, experiences, human ingenuity, social organization, and sharing the planet. The structure is as follows. You get supervised preparation time of 15 minutes, in which you are shown first the 5 images, and which you choose one of those 5 images, and then you have 15 minutes to write notes about that image that you chose. Then you have the actual presentation, which is part 1, and that goes for 1 to 2 minutes, in which you present your visual stimulus that you chose. And it's important that you relate to the theme and to the target culture. The part 2 is called a follow-up discussion. That goes for 3 to 4 minutes, and that's where I ask you questions about either the visual stimulus or about the theme in relation to your life. And part 3 is a general discussion, in which we have a general discussion on at least one additional theme, so a different theme to the photo that you chose. And I ask you questions about that additional theme. Yeah, so that's for that one. How do I get to the... All right, so next is the marking criteria. So the first one is criterion A, which is your language. So how good is the command of your language? 1 to 3, so if you get 1 to 3, command of your language is going to be limited. Vocabulary is going to be rarely appropriate to the task. Language is going to contain errors in basic structures, and they're going to interfere with communication. So basically, for you to get a 1 to 3, it's, your language is going to be pretty poor, and you're going to have a lot of errors, and it's going to interfere with communication. So it's pretty hard to get a 1 to a 3. To get to a 4 or 6, your language is going to be partially effective. You're going to be using basic grammatical structures, but it also contains errors in those basic structures, and errors still interfere with communication. Pronunciation can sometimes be unclear as well, as it's influenced by the languages. So 4 to 6, you're still creating, still making fairly basic errors. They're interfering with communication, but at least the vocabulary is appropriate to the task. Getting to the 7 to 9, your command of language is going to be mostly effective and accurate. Of course, your vocabulary is going to be appropriate to the task. You're going to be using a variety of basic and some attempts to more complex structures. So the best way to do that is, of course, bringing in the connectors, such as, and, but, however, furthermore, all those connectors we've been working on. Your language is going to be mostly accurate in basic structures, but errors can occur in more complex structures, but the errors rarely interfere with communication. Pronunciation can still be influenced by the languages, but again, does not interfere with communication. So 7 to 9, it's looking, your language is looking pretty good. Obviously, you're still making errors, but they don't interfere with what you're trying to say. 10 to 12, now you're looking at command of language being effective and mostly accurate. Vocabulary obviously being appropriate to task, variety of basic and more complex grammatical structures used effectively. Occasional errors, so you still get occasional errors, and they're minor, and obviously they do not interfere with communication. So that's kind of, getting to your 10 to 12. So, you've probably got your classic bell curve here. Most people sort of getting around the, the sort of between the 6 to 8, right? And then it sort of tapers off on either end. So that's for your language, it's criterion A. Criterion B, you got B1 and B2. So B1 is the message. So how relevant are the ideas to the selected stimulus? So to get a 1 or 2, your presentation is going to be mostly irrelevant to the stimulus. Okay, so if you're talking about apples, and the image is about oranges, you're going to get a 1 or a 2. The descriptions can also be incomplete, and the presentation is not clearly linked to the target culture. So this is really important to remember. So it's important that you link whatever image to the target culture in some way. And I'll give you some examples about that later on. So to get to a 3 or 4, presentation is mostly relevant to the stimulus with a focus on explicit details and basic personal interpretations. So what does a basic personal interpretation mean? I think that they are happy because they are smiling. I think that it is good weather because they are wearing short sleeve t-shirts and shorts. So those are personal interpretations. And the presentation is mostly linked to target culture. To get to 5 or 6, the presentation is going to be consistently relevant to the stimulus and is going to draw on explicit and implicit details. So it's basically a sort of a better version of the one before it, where your presentation makes clear links to the target culture and you provide a good range of explicit details and personal interpretations. So that's for the B1. So this is all you. This is your presentation of the image. Then B2, we get to the actual message, to the actual conversation. So this is where I ask you questions about the image or about the theme related to the image. So if you consistently struggle to address the questions, if you don't understand what I'm asking, or if your questions are limited in scope and depth, you're going to be looking at a 1 or 2. If your responses are mostly relevant to my questions and some of them are developed, then you're going to be looking at 3 to 4. If they're mostly broad in scope and depth, then more around the 4. And if your questions are relevant, if your answers are relevant to my questions and show development, including attempts to engage me. So if you ask me questions about when my birthday is, what do I like to do on my holidays, all that kind of thing, that's going to give you the 5 or 6 there for that one. And the last set of criteria is the interactive skills. So 1 to 2, comprehension and interaction are limited. So if your responses are pretty limited in the target language, and I have to continuously repeat the questions, then you're going to get that sort of mark. 3 to 4, comprehension is mostly sustained. So basically, if you just are able to answer the questions mostly, then you're going to get 3 or 4. 5 or 6, comprehension, interaction consistently sustained. Participation is sustained with some contributions. So, if you are able to answer the questions and you're able to add anything additional to the question, then you're going to be getting a 5 or 6. So this one's probably the easiest to get the highest, to get the high mark in. All right, so those are your 4 kind of criteria that we use. Criteria, the language, B1, B2, and then criteria C, interactive skills. Okay, so now we come to the presentation of the visual stimulus. So this is the first part, which goes for 1 to 2 minutes, where you first describe the visual stimulus using your prepared notes. It's important the notes are in dot point and that you don't read entirely from the notes. So obviously it's going to be hard to control, but ideally if you just got dot points and you're not relying too much on what you've written, then that's going to be best. In order to get a high mark in the criterion B1, so that's the presentation of the stimulus, you must mention a brief description of the visual stimulus. So that's where we use what we call the PALMS tool, which I'll show you in the next slide. That you relate the visual stimulus to the relevant theme of the course. So all you have to do is say this image relates to the theme of identities. Relate the visual stimulus to a cultural aspect of the target culture. So this is very important. So for example, the photo is about a family gathering. You can say family is a very important part of Hispanic culture. And that you provide personal interpretations relating to the stimulus. For example, I think people are happy because they're smiling. And here are some examples that you can use to provide those personal interpretations. So the photo makes me think of my family when we get together. It seems to me that they are having a good time. You know, it looks like they like the food that they are eating. I like this. I like the image because it reminds me of, you know, my culture. So all these are things that you can use to express your opinion and to provide implicit details about the photo. Okay, so describing the photo using the PALMS method. So this is a little kind of mnemonic acronym that we use, and it just stands for people, action, location, mood, and season. So if you just think, you know, just helps you remember, okay, I need to describe the people that are in the photo. I need to describe what they're doing, talk about where they are, talk about how they're feeling, and then talk about the weather, whether it's good weather, bad weather, whether feeling good, whether it's sunny, talk about the season, whether I think it's winter, summer, spring, that sort of thing. So this is just a really good little sort of tool to use when you're wanting to, you know, describe the photo and make sure you remember everything. All right, then we have the follow-up questions. So this is where I actually ask you questions about this the image or about the theme in general. So if the image you chose is to do with identities, I might ask you, what do you like to do with your family? Or what do you like to eat? Or, you know, those sorts of questions, which aren't necessarily related to the photo, but they're related to the theme of the photo that you chose. So there's a few dot points here of what the questions will do, and you can just go through that in your own time. Then we've got the part 3, which is the general conversation questions. So during this final part of the assessment, your teacher will introduce at least one additional theme. So whatever theme you chose, or whatever photo of the theme you chose, then I will choose an additional theme and ask you questions from that theme. And then there's some dot points here on what to expect from these questions. So this is really where you want to be understanding the questions that I ask, and then providing independent contributions as well as attempts to engage me. That will get you the high marks there. Okay, so I've created here a sample or a couple of sample images that I have described, so that you can see how to best do it. So the way I've done it is I've divided into I've structured the description into 4 main areas. The first one is a theme and culture. The second one is a basic description of the photo. The third one is the personal interpretations and opinions of the photo. And the last one is past future actions. So theme and culture, that's the most important one. So that's why it's first. And it's really important to establish that right at the beginning. So you can see for this image here, I said this photo is related to the theme of identities. You will have the theme identities at the top, so it's super easy to do that. And then in the photo, there is a family eating at a table. Pretty simple. Family and food are very important aspects of Hispanic culture. So you've related the image to the target culture by saying that, and straight away, you're going to be getting those higher marks in the B1 criteria. Next comes a basic description of the photo. So pretty basic, you know, to the right of the photo is the mother. The mother has brown hair and brown eyes. She wears a white short sleeve t-shirt. To the right of the mother is the grandfather, and to the left of the mother is the son. On the table are some plates of food. It seems that they are eating paella, which is a typical Spanish dish. It is clear that the weather is good because it is sunny. So you can see here I've kind of provided basic descriptions as well as some personal interpretations. But then we get to the actual more in-depth personal interpretations. So you can see that the family's happy because everyone is smiling. It seems to me that it is summer because they are wearing light clothes and short sleeves. In my opinion, it is important as a family. The photo makes me feel happy because you can see that the family is happy. Blah, blah, blah. So these are all So these are all your personal interpretations and opinions. And then I've provided the Spanish version down here. And then lastly, you've got your past future action. So this is where you get to kind of show off your verb tenses a little bit, where you just talk about something that they did before the photo and something that they're going to do after the photo. So, before the photo, I think the family went to the supermarket to buy food. After the photo, I think the family's going to go to the cinema to see a movie. So, simple as that. And obviously this stuff is just made up. Doesn't really matter what you say. You're just mostly, showing your verb tense knowledge. All right, so that's how to structure the description of the photo in those 4 different areas. I've provided another one here. So this is in the theme of experiences. And you can see it's the same basic structure: theme and culture, basic description of the photo, personal interpretations and opinions, past and future actions. And you can see it's very similar. This photo is related to the theme of experiences. In the photo, there are some young people in a park playing music and singing. Music and spending time with friends are very important aspects of Hispanic culture. So you can see it's pretty formulaic. There's nothing too out of the ordinary. So, it should be pretty easy to get a high mark for the presentation stimulus. I have also done the recording, so you can actually hear myself describing the photo. All right, so this is slide 10 of 52 slides. So let's just get moving. I'm just kidding. That pretty much is the end of the presentation slides. This here now, what I've done here is I've given you guys an opportunity, or I'm giving you guys an opportunity to practice describing the photo. So you've got a photo here, you've got the theme, and then down here you can write your notes, and then you can do the recording of the of your notes, or of your description of the photo. So I've got 2 photos per theme. Okay, so there's a family photo, same thing. You're going to write your responses and then record your answer. And then we've got 2 for experiences. So that's obviously, leisure, lifestyle, family, that sort of thing you can talk about. We got our next one for experiences. It's obviously people at a festival, some sort, some kind of party. They got their party hats, Mexican hats. So what can you talk about the culture here? Well, you can say friends are an important part of Hispanic culture. Festivals are an important part of Hispanic culture. I don't know, maybe they're at a football game. You can say sport. You can say hats. It's an important part of Mexican culture, stuff like that. So just remember, whatever you do, whatever you say, you want to relate it to the Hispanic culture in some way. So you've got your 2 images per theme. So this is human ingenuity. So for this, we're just going to focus on the first 3 themes, which is identities, experiences, and social organization, which we've started to see with the education side of things. So that is, that's there. And then I've also created some questions. So if I go back into full screen, I have actually recorded myself asking 10 or more questions per theme, which you can then provide an answer to. So you play the question out, and then you just record yourself doing the answer. Okay, so that is really good practice as well. So you can see I've got 10 questions for identities, the identities theme. Sorry, that should be experiences, 10 questions for the experiences, and 10 questions for this, 10 questions for the social organization. So what I'd like you to do is, so you're going to get this as a task. You're going to go through, you've got all the information here that I've just presented to you in these slides here about the whole structure and how it works. You got the examples, the 2 examples that I did with the recording, which you can hear. And then you've got the practice where you can actually practice describing the images. And then you've got the practice questions where you can practice hearing the questions and answering them. Any questions about everything that I have shared? I'm just going to stop sharing now. Is that all clear?